we kicked off these neighborhood exchanges actually pre-COVID, if we can remember back then, and have had a series of them every year on different topics that really look at what are some of the wins that are taking place in our community, and what are some of the themes and ideas and strategies that are working. Because we know in our work at United Way is deeply rooted in neighborhoods. It's deeply rooted in the belief that neighborhoods can and should drive their destiny, and that part of our opportunity is to lift up what is working and share it all around the community. And we've been thrilled to work with our partners in places like Austin and Auburn Gresham and South Chicago and Bronzeville, and really all around the region as they innovate new and great ideas. And today's discussion is just another example of some exciting things that are taking place, and really looking at the role of community incubators and how investment in local entrepreneurs can really lift up neighborhoods and communities all around our region. I have the great privilege, though, of introducing our moderator today. And our moderator is Ella McCann. Ella is the Manager of External Relations and Strategic Partnerships for the Baumhart Center at Loyola University. For those unfamiliar, our great partners at the Baumhart Center, it is an interdisciplinary center for the university that prepares leaders to tackle society's most pressing challenges through education, engagement, and research. I mean, frankly, we've been very thrilled to be partnering with the Baumhart Center in Loyola for the last 2.5 years on this effort. Prior to joining Bombheart, Ella was an international program manager with Chicago's Sister Cities International, an initiative of World Business Chicago, the economic development arm of the city of Chicago. Thank you, Ella, for your partnership and for leading this important conversation today. I'm really excited for our panel, and just one hint, I would encourage folks to ask my good friend Desiree about football tips in addition to her day job. She was our co-coach earlier this year, so very, very excited to have her here as well. So Ella, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our panel and to lead us in our discussion today.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean. And thank you so much for the warm introduction. We truly value our partnership with United Way, and we are thrilled to bring you this conversation with leaders from across Chicago who are doing good in the neighborhood. And as a native Chicagoan, I'm only slightly biased about this conversation just because I love highlighting just how amazing our city is and the organizations that are doing really well for it. So I'd love to bring up our speakers. So first, we have Desiree Vargas, Wrigley, Executive Director of TechRise by P33 Chicago. We'll also be joined by Britney Robbins, founder and CEO of the Gray Matter Experience. Bernita Johnson-Gabriel, Director of Strategic Relationships at Cleveland Avenue. And Jonathan Goodell, Program Associate at the Chicago Urban League. Excellent. We have such a stellar group this morning. And I am thrilled to be in conversation with these folks. I mean, Jonathan is one of our Bombheart scholars, so we have an MBA program. Jonathan is part of that. TechRise just had an amazing season last year, so we're really excited to hear about that from Desiree. Bernita and I, also used to work together at World Business Chicago, and they've been doing amazing things over at Cleveland Avenue. And Britney is going to be a faculty for the Baumhart Center, so we're just really in community this morning, and really excited to talk to you all. Go ahead and get Britney up. And then we'll, so once we have everybody up, we'll go ahead and if you wouldn't mind introducing your organizations briefly. I think everyone on the call is probably in tune to somewhat, but just for a little refresher, if we could just have everybody introduce themselves and their organizations briefly, that'll sort of set the ground for us. So why don't we start with Desiree?
Hey, it's great to be here. I think Sean oversold my my coaching abilities in flag football, but we're undefeated, so I guess we were pretty good. But I am a two-time Latina founder here in Chicago. My first company, Give Forward, was one of the first crowdfunding platforms in the world. It's now part of GoFundMe. And my second company, Parachute, you might have seen on Shark Tank, but we're a kids activity marketplace. And both of those experiences have given me kind of a foundation for understanding how our funding and our startup ecosystem is in Chicago. And candidly, after the murder of George Floyd, I wanted to use that for that experience for something more important. And so I joined the team at P33 to help focus on an initiative called TechRise that is designed to help Black and Latinx founders all the way from idea stage to exit. If you're not familiar with P33, we are a nonprofit that's independently run and independently funded, started by Penny Pritzker and Kelly Walsh and Chris Gladwin. and we focus on how to make Chicago more of an innovation hub. Founders, tech, startup ecosystem is one pillar for us. Then we have our workforce development. And then our third area of focus is regional priorities like electric vehicles and climate tech, quantum, and life sciences.
Excellent. Just light work, just a little bit. Yeah, doing a little bit for your city. Excellent. We're so glad to have you here. Next, we'll go over to Jonathan.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Goodell, and I'm a program associate at the Chicago Urban League Center for Entrepreneurship. So the Chicago Urban League is one of the oldest national urban league affiliates. We pretty much do anything from trying to help people find jobs, affordable housing, enhance their educational experiences, grow their businesses. And we've been around since 1916, located in Bronzeville. Pardon me for a second. Sorry, it's that time of year, everybody's a little clogged up. But I work specifically for our Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, which we primarily help primarily African Americans, but pretty much anybody is welcome to launch and grow their own businesses. We provide entrepreneurs with the tools necessary to maximize revenues, reduce costs, increase profitability, drive job creation, pretty much anything under the sun to get Black entrepreneurs and pretty much any entrepreneurs to where they are trying to go. We try to help them with that.
Excellent. We love helping folks get to where they're trying to go, and all of you are doing that. And so we're just so thrilled to have you with us. Next, Bernita Johnson Gabriel.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me today. Again, Bernita Johnson Gabriel with Cleveland Avenue. Cleveland Avenue is a venture capital firm that focuses primarily on food, beverage, and food technology related businesses. There are 3 funds. The one that I am associated with is the Cast Us Fund, and that fund is specifically directed to Black, Latinx, and women-owned businesses. And we are sector agnostic, so not just food and beverage. We will look at any type of business. Our sweet spot are businesses that have revenue of about $250,000 and up, and have been in business for about 2 years.
Excellent. Yeah, and we've had conversations about the Cast Us Fund, and that's just amazing. And so we're really glad that you're here with us to share more. And next we'll have Britney Robbins.
Good morning, everyone. So great to see so many people on the call this morning. I'm Britney Robbins, the founder and CEO of the Gray Matter Experience. And in addition to all the great work everyone on this call is doing, we are approaching that angle from the youth and young adult side. So really making sure that Black high school students and young adults have access to entrepreneurial curriculum, that they're able to experience entrepreneurship at an early age, get them in better practices, habits, so that 5, 10, 15 years from now, as you all are looking to hire folks, as you all are looking to help support businesses, that we have a stronger ecosystem and pipeline to do that. So we've been doing that work for about 6 years here in Chicago, locally, working from 15 to about 24-year-olds and making sure, again, that whether they're just sort of getting started on their entrepreneurial journey or have been working in entrepreneurship for a while, hustling, doing side hustles, making sure that they have the support that they need to grow their businesses and operationalize the work that they're doing. So happy to be here this morning.
Thank you so much. And as you all can see, we have just a wealth of information here and a range of organizations that are really doing well for Chicago. And I'm sure all of you will have questions for them as well. We will be doing a Q&A, so feel free to start thinking about those questions. We'll ask that you put them in the chat, and then I will ask them to our panelists when we get to that part of the conversation. But first, I'm going to ask a few questions of our guests. And so I would say that some would argue that Chicago is uniquely positioned for incubators and organizations like yours with its 77 neighborhoods. How has being in Chicago and in the neighborhoods been beneficial to you and your organizations? And we can go, maybe we'll go in the reverse order. So Britney, if you want to go ahead and start, and then we'll go.
There we go. All right, so we are really community agnostic. When we do our programming, typically we're hosting them outside of different incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces around the city, and making sure that our students have exposure and access to places and spaces around them. Also reinforcing this narrative that you don't always have to go downtown to find value, right? Also reinforcing the narrative that if you're not able to find the things that you're looking for, those are opportunities to create those in your own neighborhoods. And so our approach has always been very community-centric, very neighborhood-centric, and making sure that we're exposing our students to those opportunities. What that's allowed us to do as well is inform our programming and our experiences for youth by keeping their voice front and center, right? Making sure that we have those relationships built and tapped into the community, so that while we're building programming, while we're building experiences, while we're building relationships and partnerships, we know exactly what our community needs because we're getting that feedback, because we've had those relationships already. I'll take this on a personal note as well. Last year, I moved to West Garfield Park, and that was my own sort of initiative to make sure that I always have those community ties, that we're able to be plugged into a particular community, so that we can gather that feedback and really understand from the ground level what is needed to really advance our communities, what are the resources, what are the partnerships, how do we really start to move dollars and resources in the directions that we want to see them, versus a top-down approach, which we often see. And so that's sort of the approach that Gray Matter takes, is just making sure that along the way, our community is that voice that is driving and directing all of the work that we do. And I think that helps to enhance the overall experience and to give our participants buy-in as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point about being physically in the space, as well as welcoming people into that space, right? Because yeah, I think a lot of folks think, oh, well, only downtown is where all the incubators are. And it's like, no, we're everywhere. And not only that, our founders and our people are in those neighborhoods as well. So we want to support them. Excellent. Bernita.
So I would echo Brittany about the importance of being rooted in neighborhoods and not just being downtown. The fund that I work for, we are looking for entrepreneurs and founders specifically on the south and west sides of Chicago. So we depend on not only the incubators in neighborhoods, but also the organizations that work with businesses, because that is where we get a lot of referrals from, right? We know those organizations know the businesses, they know what stage they're in. And in some cases, some of the businesses that we're talking to are not quite ready for investment, right? And so we can go back to those same resources to make sure that they're ready when the time comes. So we're not just saying no, right? We're sending them out to these neighborhood resources to make sure that they have what they need to get ready for investment.
I remember speaking with Andy Zopp, who's also over at Cleveland Avenue, and she had mentioned that, yeah, that was one of the things, is that sometimes folks aren't ready for Cleveland Avenue just yet, but you all are willing to help them get to the point where maybe a year later they can come back and say, okay, now we're ready. And we just love having that sort of circular community going on over there. Jonathan, let me share.
Right. Thank you. I would like to echo actually what Bernita was saying, which is that we get referrals and we work with people pretty much throughout the city. And I think what's great about being connected to the neighborhoods and being in the neighborhood is having a pulse on pretty much everything that's going on in the city. So that might mean using our network and saying, oh, you're looking for a general contractor. All right, well, we know 3 or 4 or how many general contractors. Or for example, we see that sometimes businesses come in and might need a certain help for something, or they might need, for example, we work with issues of converting over to digital, especially marketing during the pandemic. So we put on a digital marketing workshop, and actually a shout out to Leslie Williams, who runs our Next Digital campaign, or program. He's on the call right now. But that's something that we realized that we kind of intuitively understood by being connected in the city. So it's not like this prescribed approach of, oh, these are these great ideas that we believe are good. It's, okay, we see people need this help, or they need a little guidance on this, so we create it that way. We try to be reactive then, instead of say kind of prescribed, I guess is the word to use.
And you bring up a great point, which is that Chicago, and I know we have some folks that are not necessarily in Chicago, but if you've ever been to Chicago, or if you ever come to Chicago, it is the smallest big city ever. And so we're all trying to support each other, and we're all working with each other. And if Jonathan has somebody and he needs them to talk to somebody else, you know, he knows he can call up somebody and say, you know, hey, we need something over at, you know, Urban League, and they can help with that. So that's really a great point about Chicago. Desiree.
Okay, I won't make that mistake again. I'm going to stay unmuted the whole time because I didn't realize it was locked. Ella, that was actually a great segue into what I would love to chat about from our perspective at P33. So TechRise is not a traditional incubator. What we are is an initiative to try to catalyze change for Black and Latinx founders, and specifically looking at access to capital, access to networks, and access to knowledge. And we recognize that it would be a mistake to come in and build an incubator that is all competitive with the amazing programs that these other panelists represent, but then also the many that exist in our city, from 1871's Black Tech Accelerator and Latinx Incubator from IHCC to Sunshine Enterprises to what's happening in the Women's Business Development Center and YWCA. So we recognize that we had an opportunity to be more of a convening and collaborator in this role. And we also recognize that one of the areas that is the most difficult for incubators to support founders in is the actual capital component. And so the role that we play at TechRise is we raised, and we're still in the process of raising, a $5 million fund. And we deploy that capital through a pretty democratic process. We have virtual pitch competitions every week. And in preparation for those pitch competitions, to kind of tackle the networks and knowledge challenge, we do two things. We do a pitch framework session that helps founders understand how to structure a 4-minute pitch, which really is just kind of like an appetizer version of their longer pitch that they would do with investors. And it's a forcing function for them to be really concise about their messaging of why and why does it matter. And then we also introduce them to an existing founder or sometimes an investor in our community, or sometimes nationally, depending, to make sure that they get some kind of industry relevant knowledge and hopefully an introduction that can open doors to other potential investors or mentors. And then they come onto our live streamed YouTube channel and pitch for 4 minutes with 4 minutes of Q&A. And then someone wins that day somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000. So like the main promise of TechRise is more about how can we go and go into the neighborhoods and find all of these incubators and make sure that we can recruit the founders to come and pitch. And when we originally started talking about this idea, especially the venture capitalists in Chicago, were saying there's no way you can do 30 pitch competitions with 5 founders a week in Chicago. Like there just aren't enough founders. And within 3 weeks, we had 180 applicants. And so I think, the role that we play is more about bringing visibility and capital, but we are so dependent on the successful, execution of these incredible neighborhood-based incubators.
That's a really great point. I think, a lot of times people are like, no, there's not enough demand for this. And it's like, no, there's way more the demand than maybe we even have supply, right? And all of you are doing the work to make sure that people are getting capital, that they're getting access to opportunities, and things like that. So we really appreciate the work that you all are doing. But I'm sure with that, there come some challenges. And so I'm wondering if you all could share some of the challenges you maybe have encountered in doing this work. Whether that's through helping find capital and things like that, or helping find the people that need to do the work. And we'll start with maybe with Jonathan.
Great, thank you very much. I think we all talk about access to capital, and I think we can all agree that's an issue here. But I think also being ready to receive that capital. So for example, sometimes we have people come in who are like, I'm looking for a city grant, or I'm applying for this grant through the state. And I'm like, okay, well, have you submitted your tax returns? Oh no, I haven't done that yet. It's like, okay, so let's start there. Or you need to have a CPA. You don't know a CPA? Okay, let's connect you to these 5 different CPAs that we know. It's really trying to get people ready to be bankable, or to, go to a bank, and then also help them create those relationships with a bank. And I think a lot of the challenges that we sometimes see in Chicago is that it's also the network effects. Who do you know? Who don't you know? And everything is really, especially in this city, and I'm a Chicago transplant myself, I'm not originally from here, but I've learned it's a city where you need to know people. So we try to help people with that as well. So it's not just say the actual access, here's a bank, go do it. It's here's how we know this person, talk to them about this. We've already looked at your pitch. We looked at your financials. Everything looks really good. Go for it. That's really kind of the challenges that we see here, is that not everybody has access to these networks. And I think that we sometimes, in American culture, we like to believe that, entrepreneurs get by on just grit and intellect and drive. And not to discount that, that's very true. But also a big portion of that is, who do you know? Do you know specific investors, or is your friend's father a banker, or like all these little things that just come together to make that just a little bit easier and kind of give you some more tailwinds to kind of propel you to where you need to go. And we try to reduce those headwinds and help you get to that point.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I actually remember always reminds me when people say, you know, who do you know? One of my mentors mentioned, who knows you, right? Because then they're also having people that are in the rooms that are saying like, I know this, you know, this startup that could be really great. Would you be able to help me with them and things like that, right? So I think it's a mutual thing of who do you know, who knows you, and how can we all continue to help each other with the work that we're doing. Why don't we go to Britney? Why don't you share some maybe some challenges that have happened?
Thank you, Ella. I'm going to piggyback a lot off of what Jonathan said, because he took a lot of what I wanted to say, because those
Sorry.
I mean, it's the experiences that we see, right? Definitely how to utilize capital is a big thing, right? Is that especially now over the past 2 years, as folks are redirecting their internal dollars and resources towards our communities, just making sure that our folks know how to use the money, right? What is the usage of funds? What's it going to be used for? And oftentimes, because we don't have that social capital, because a lot of our businesses are micro businesses, right? It's 1 or 2 of us working inside of an organization. We don't have that time, space, or energy to really plan for the future, right? We're sort of building the plane as we fly it. And so now as we're starting to amass resources, it's really trying to connect them with resources to take a step back, right? And think about the bigger picture and really have a place to allocate some of these resources and funds to. But the second part of that is that social capital piece, right? Making sure that they have connections to the people that they need to make this work happen, whether that's capacity building resources by way of accountants and lawyers and bookkeepers, so that they can keep internally their affairs in order, or if it's other folks to make connections on their behalf, and mentors to help them grow, coaches, etc. It's really a matter of connecting them to resources that they didn't have prior to, honestly, I would say the last 2 years, we've seen a ton of movement. A couple other things that I would like to raise here. Another issue that we've seen is, you know, while the incubators and accelerators are doing a fabulous job of really connecting entrepreneurs to resources, to knowledge, to education, one thing that we sort of recognized in my role at Cleveland Avenue is sort of this gap of individualized approaches, and that a lot of folks are getting very similar content and are at different stages in their business, right? So they're taking this sort of blanket approach and applying it to their business, not taking into account the nuances that their particular business needs to grow. And so one of the things that we're doing, an initiative that we're working over there, is really trying to get folks connected to what it is they need for their particular business at the stage that they're at. And I think that's one way that we can really start to see some of these businesses shift and really start to see some of these narratives change, is really focusing on individualized businesses versus, hey, here is a early stage company, here are the things that they need, right? Which that may be true, but there's nuances underneath that hood. And then the last thing that I'll say is just helping to make sure that the ecosystem is easy to navigate for our entrepreneurs. I think we are doing a great job of, you know, seeing a need and providing an opportunity and creating opportunities for entrepreneurs. But oftentimes in our communities, folks don't know that we exist. Folks don't know where we're at, or they'll work with one of us and not know that someone else exists. So I think, you know, creating partnerships, collaborating, us really leveraging the opportunities that we have to build these pipelines, ecosystems, and make them more efficient, I think is the opportunity that we have in the roles that we play to make this a little easier for entrepreneurs to navigate, so that the systems talk to each other in the ways that we need them to really move forward the progress we want to see.
So many good points that are being made on this call, and I hope you all are all taking notes and definitely connecting with each other, because I think Britney just hit the nail on the head, right? How are we creating this social ecosystem is supportive of everyone in the work that we're doing, and that's just amazing. So I really appreciate that. Bernita.
So there's not much to add, right? After Jonathan and Britney, and Britney and I have had several conversations about this. So I think the only thing that I will add is that most of you on the call, if you are from Chicago, you know that we are really a rich city of resources for small businesses. The challenge, as Britney said, is the connectivity, right? And that ecosystem, and how to get people through that ecosystem. I will say that one of the challenges that we've discovered is that for startups and newer businesses, there are a ton of resources. But then when you get to those growth companies, the resources kind of shrink a little bit, right? And so there's not that wealth of a network for those companies that we look at, which are those growth companies. And so I would say that that's been a challenge for us. The other challenge that we've had is that when we are working with these high growth companies, they, you know, like every founder, right? They want to wear all hats. And so in order to grow, you know, you got to shed some of those hats, right? So we found some challenges with organizational structure and those types of things. And so working with founders on that, finding consultants that will help them map, you know, provide a roadmap as to how to correct that. Those have been some things that we've been able to do. And then again, as I said, just making sure that as they are growing and as they are moving in that direction, that makes them eligible for investment. And then last but not least, we have to put education out there, right? You know, so many business owners have no idea, and entrepreneurs have no idea what venture capital is or how it works. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with folks where they're, oh, you're going to take over my business. No, I don't, you know, so they just have this fear of, if I give equity, I'm losing control of my business. And so we work very hard to make sure that folks understand that, no, we don't want to run your business. You are the expert. We want you to run your business. But here's money and here are resources. And I think that's the other thing that sort of sets us apart from other venture capital firms too, is that it's not only about the money for us, it's like, how can we help you? What resources, what in-house resources and external can we bring to your company to help you grow?
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think I always see tweets like, oh, we just raised Series A funding and and you're like, what does that even mean, right? The venture capital, not knowing the language and things like that is really a barrier to the access. And so I love that you all are educating folks on that. Desiree, I wonder if you have anything to add with TechRise, any challenges that maybe you all have seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the challenges that has been kind of documented across the city, but is that the early stage founders, and we're talking mostly about tech startups, not traditional small businesses, there's just such a huge disparity in terms of access to friends and family stage of funding. And it creates this ripple effect through the life cycle of the business. And so specifically, founders in Chicago, traditional founders, have access to about $120,000 in startup funding, whether it's personal wealth, family money, access to lines of credit on their credit cards. And Black and Latinx founders have somewhere between 5 and 35,000. So, you know, they're starting either 1/20th behind or, you know, a fourth, or, you know, at 25%. But then you go to the next level, and the kind of pre-seed seed stage is $1.4 million for traditional founders and only 200,000 for Black founders and Latinx founders that end up raising over $1 million. So you can see how that amplifies over time, and basically the delta just keeps getting bigger at every stage, which decreases the chances of founders of color getting into an exit that has some kind of meaningful outcome for them. And so we are looking at, you know, how can we support not just the TechRise founders, but actually founders across our city to accelerate how quickly those rounds come together, so that we can get high potential founders with a ton of ambition and great ideas through the stages faster, so that they have a better chance of success. And then we can kind of emulate a little bit more what we've seen happen in coastal VCs. The other thing that we're seeing is that most of the founders we're talking to are not fundraising in Chicago because they've had such a terrible experience. I will say that with the, you know, launch of Castus and Long Jump and Fifth Star funds and some of the funding from TechRise, last year Chicago saw its best year ever, and we actually became the best city in the world for Black and Latinx founders at 16% of early stage venture capital going to Black and Latinx. And just to give context, we went from 3.5 million in 2019 to 36 million in 2021. So we 10x'd as a city in 2 years. And so what I want to say is a challenge has actually turned into, I think, an incredible win for our city. And it happened because of intentional collaboration and kind of intentional kind of lifting all boats that we have done over the last 18 months. So it's not all bad news. I think it's, you know, on the way to being something really, really powerful.
Those are some really great numbers. And I think, yeah, I think Chicago was also #1 in sort of like tech startups and unicorn companies and things like that. So I think we are definitely emerging as the center. I always like to to emphasize that we're the center of the country for a reason, right? And that we're able to connect you to all the different aspects, but we really have a lot of the resources here. And when we work together and when we invest in each other, we do see those numbers just exponentially grow.
And just to clarify on that,
yeah.
we were the fastest growing on unicorns and the fastest growing on venture capital, not the largest.
Yeah.
So we still have a lot of, I think we're number 12 in terms of capital.
We're getting there. We're getting there. I was so excited to speak with all of you, and we intentionally chose these speakers because they all are just so passionate about this work. And so I wonder if you all could share what are some of the opportunities, or what are some of the things that bring you joy about this work as you're doing it? And we'll start with Bernita, actually, this time.
Oh, wow. So working with small businesses has been, gosh, over the last few years, something that I've really enjoyed. If some of you know my background, I started out in this not-for-profit world in Bronzeville, working with small and medium-sized businesses, quarter revitalization, et cetera. So just the revitalization of communities and neighborhoods, which obviously includes small businesses, watching them grow, doing many of the things that Jonathan talked about, and making sure that they have the resources that they need. So that's kind of just been a joy for me, moving right along with my career into the city, then with World Business Chicago. And now I get the opportunity to give away money. I don't have to go raise it. So that's really exciting, because most of my career I've been on the ground trying to find money. And so now it's just a matter of us tapping into those businesses that really have growth potential. And I think what's most exciting for me is watching or being a part of building wealth, right? And so building wealth, revitalizing neighborhoods, because many of the businesses that we're looking for are in LMI neighborhoods. And so bringing all that together for me brings me a lot of joy and happiness.
It's so great to hear. I love, how you went from having to raise the money, but now giving it away. And we absolutely love that and love to hear that. Britney.
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. I'm going to approach it from two sides. The excitement I get, the joy that I get in working with sort of adult entrepreneurs is revitalizing hope and giving people opportunities to thrive rather than survive. And I think, again, over the last few years, we've seen a lot of shifts and focus in this area. And so now that a lot of these resources are coming together, it really is, it just feels different. It just feels, for the most part, very hopeful, like some things are going to shift. And I think that is trickling down to the communities and the folks that we serve, and sort of giving them that perseverance to keep going and keep moving, and making it a reality, right? Sometimes we talk about these things in terms of theory, or like, here's what we could do. And now being able to put dollars and resources behind some of the things they've been working on, I think it's making it real for them. On the youth side of things, I think it goes even deeper. In the ways in which we expose youth to entrepreneurship, to me, really fills my heart, because it's exposure, right? And as a 15, 16, 17-year-old, getting access to all of the folks that are on this call, right? Getting access to play around and build your first business and get your first investment capital, to see, like, what would I do with $5,000? What would I do with $10,000? And how can I build a business and a company that, again, not only am I building skills for the future, I'm getting this real world experience on what it's like to build a business, right? I'm also being exposed to all of these different industries at the same time. So sales and marketing and finance. So it's helping to shape their sights on what's possible. It's helping them to sort of realize what they want to do post leaving the Gray Matter experience, post leaving high school, right? Whether that's majoring in entrepreneurship in college, whether that's working for a small business or startup, interning at some of these places. And so just seeing their sights expand on what's possible, seeing it be made a reality, and then equipping them with the resources and network to make those things a reality. It's really exciting, and I'm really hopeful about what that will mean for our communities, again, in 5, 10, 15 years, with these experiences that our students are getting today.
Yeah, I think the youth are really the future. They are just on it, and they're already coming into it hyper connected through social media and through tech and things like that, right? And so now they're already, way ahead at their starting point. And so where are they going to be, like you said, in 15 years, who knows? But because of your work, we're definitely setting them up for success. Jonathan.
Thank you. I think the opportunities are really just, and I think the benefits as well is just seeing the enthusiasm that people have. And especially in lieu of the pandemic, and honestly, the world sometimes seems like it's going crazy. Working with people who have hope, who are helping them realize their dreams, those are the opportunities. And I think also, and this actually just came through, but somebody that I was working with on applying for a NOF grant just got it for like $270,000 to open up their restaurant. And that's amazing. Like that's such a great feeling of realizing taking somebody who's really passionate, really enthusiastic about something and helping them get to that point. And I think that to me is an opportunity where we get to be players in this space where we get to help people, but then we also get to see very tangible fruits of our labor and everybody else's labor as well, and see like, oh, this is a new business, or this is a new innovative green dry cleaning company, or, there's all these different things that could be done. And it's a group effort. And it's a group effort that shows, I guess, we can work together, we can coordinate, and ultimately bring some real tangible value, both monetary and also societal.
Yeah, I think that's something that I always try to emphasize too, is just we're so much stronger together when we all, support each other as best as we can, because why gatekeep and why, hold on to these things? We have so many amazing people that are doing things to make our world better. So that's a really great point. Desiree.
I mean, I think that entrepreneurship is incredibly addictive, and being able to help entrepreneurs is equally addictive. So from a personal perspective, I love going to work every day. But I think one of the most exciting things that I've seen in the year that I've been at P33 is how we are seeing corporations come together to help startups in a new way. Like before, it's been such a siloed experience. And of course, it started with Verizon working with P33 on the TechRise initiative. But we now also see just like, not just corporate philanthropy, but like marketing dollars and employee resource groups. And to answer one of the questions in the chat, founders often think they need all of this cash to start their businesses because they have skill gaps. And it's not just like how to write a term sheet or, how to write a financial model, but it's things like setting up your email marketing campaigns or setting up your Google Analytics. And there are people that are sitting at our large corporate partners who do this all day and can solve something in 30 minutes that takes founders 6 hours to work on. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is that we're kicking off a skills-based volunteer program for employee resource groups that engage in TechRise, and starting next month. So we don't know yet the output of it, but it seems like a way to kind of displace some of the early capital needs and move that over to a pro bono service. So that kind of intersection of startup and corporate is one of the things that's bringing me joy. Seems excessive on that term, but it's exciting to see, because this is the first time in my career that I've seen that intersection. So yeah,
I think that's still, it's very worth highlighting, and things that get you excited about moving forward. We are going to go ahead and move into Q&A, and we're getting a lot of questions from the audience. So I'm going to read them off as they've come in, and we'll try to get to as many as we can in the time that we have left. But so the first one we have for the panelists is there anything about the local government or public infrastructure in Chicago that makes your work easier than it might be elsewhere? Anything specific to Chicago that is a barrier? So I think we've sort of touched on some aspects of that, but I wonder if there's anything that makes your work easier rather than being in another city, or anything that might be a barrier.
I could start if I think one of the things that really makes Chicago one of the benefits working in Chicago is I think there's this citywide understanding of we need to build up small business, we need to build up our entrepreneurs, and I think we're all benefits of that. We're here, we're having these conversations. There's this good ecosystem that kind of reinforces that. Where I think, and also there's a lot of grant programs. So for example, I mentioned the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. I don't know how many other cities would be like, yes, if your business plan looks good, we'll give you $270,000 as a grant. I don't know other cities that are doing that. Yeah. However, for I think maybe issues or things that could be better, I think Chicago is a very big city, and because of how big it is, how diverse it is, there's a lot of people. And sometimes I think it's trying to navigate that bureaucracy and understanding kind of who do I actually have to talk to, not do say like a phone tree of 9 different people to finally get to the right person. I think if there was better communication between Chicago city government and also just municipal governments throughout the area, I think that would really yield a lot of great benefits.
That's a very good point. Yeah. And if anyone else wanted to.
I was going to add that the fact that we have, World Business Chicago as this kind of convening that has the eyes and ears of the city government to help put, resources behind initiatives that we might want to, think through or collaborate on is such an incredible gift. And then also having some really internationally well-known incubators here with Matter, 1871, MHub, MXD. We're just very fortunate to have those kinds of kind of gravitational pull organizations here that are leading the way across the world.
Yeah. Great.
I think I would just add, in terms of the city, the BACP, Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, have done a really good job of identifying organizations and getting that information out, the supportive organizations to small and medium-sized businesses. And I don't think that other cities perhaps have that much of a network. And then to Jonathan's point, they've been able to sort of tie their work into the Department of Planning and Development, who has these grant programs like SPIF, like NOF, and others that help businesses with facade and those kinds of things. So I think that that whole part of the network that we have, or part of that, is in part due to the work that the city has done to identify agencies, of course, which they fund, to do the work that is necessary to help these businesses.
Yeah. Brittany, if you wanted to add anything, or if you're okay, great.
I'm happy to add a challenge, actually, if that's helpful. I think that one of the problems that we have actually comes from our funding ecosystem. So traditionally, while we do a little bit of consumer funding, our city's VCs and angel investors have tended to look at companies that are kind of de-risked, and specifically B2B, SaaS, food delivery, and now fintech, I would say, are all categories that are popular. But the problem is that first-time founders typically solve problems that they personally understand, which is often consumer and often represents a community that investors don't personally understand. So we have a disconnect between the knowledge of the problems to be solved by community members and the funding opportunities that exist at the institutional level.
That's a really, really great point to pull up. Making sure that people are understanding the needs of the folks that are in the community and why they're asking for funding, as opposed to being like, well, we just want to fund things that are doing well already. Next question is, I think sometimes incubators themselves need assistance in programmatic or incentives that can be utilized for coaxing an effective network and flow for growth. Working for the city of Springfield, Illinois, we have a couple of projects that we would like to have incubators in underserved areas of the city. Any feedback? So I guess any advice for the city of Springfield as they are looking to start their own incubator network downstate?
I'll go again. I have high conviction around stakeholder-centric design. And so, I think often what we do when we're designing new solutions is that we recognize the problem, we look at the primary target of the solution, and then we build for them. And when we're doing this kind of work, it's so critical to essentially create like a stakeholder map of everyone who benefits when you succeed at solving this problem, and then making sure that you engage all of the stakeholders in some capacity in your discovery process so that you understand where you might be able to weave them in. And that can be from a funding perspective, from an expertise perspective, from a physical space, and just making sure that you start from the very beginning with collaboration in mind. I think I started my career at the Kauffman Foundation, so entrepreneurship education was a big part of my work. And what I saw in those days in the early 2000s is that there was so much kind of proprietary and siloed work being done in startups and in incubators. And if you can start from scratch and build something incredible, like do it with as many stakeholders as possible, as early as possible.
Excellent. Anyone else? Definitely, yeah. Finding the community down in Springfield, which is our capital. Anyone else? That's pretty good. Good point. Okay, I'm pulling up the questions on my phone just so I can make sure I get all of them. What are some of the more basic or specific needs that organizations can benefit from? For example, website building, marketing. I think some of you have touched on these in your answers, but if there are any other specific or basic needs that organizations can think about before they're starting?
I would say yes, marketing, finance, just like bookkeeping in general. I think that's a huge one. Please pay your taxes, submit your tax returns.
Yeah.
You're not doing yourself any favors by not submitting your tax returns.
Yeah.
And I think also just sometimes, for lack of a better word, a pail of cold water. I think sometimes when we have like great ideas, we kind of sometimes put on blinders and don't think about, okay, what are the other possibilities? Or like, say I have the greatest barbecue in my neighborhood, but there's 20 other barbecue spots in your neighborhood. You're going to be fighting over scraps, right? And you need somebody to say like, hey, maybe let's think about this. Or that if you're marketing something, if you're, once again, understanding kind of the marketing and who you're going after. Because say, if you're a barbecue spot, you're not going to want to post Instagram ads on like a vegan page, right? Like, yes, in theory, your product is open to everyone and you would want that, but you're not getting the return on your money for that. And I think just those very basics of just making sure that you are able to be legal with the city, the state, the country, and then also being able to get money and being able to show, hey, this is what I would do with that money, and having a business plan set up. Sometimes business plans sound very like, I don't know, for some people kind of like car insurance, like I just need to have it. But it's really a guidepost to help you kind of understand where you're going to go, hold yourself accountable, but then also to help other people understand you and understand what you're trying to say, because you can't always be in the same room with them or explain it, and you need to be able to write that down as well. So it's kind of just like very basic fundamentals, and they're not exciting things, but they're very important things nonetheless.
Hey, Jonathan, can I just add to, or just throw out the financials piece, right? The taxes, for example. I know when I worked with small businesses, you know, they'd show a loss. They show a loss, and then they would want to know why they couldn't get funded from a bank. So we just kept saying to them, you know, you got to be real with your tax. No, you don't want to pay, but in the long run, so it's not just about the financials, it's who you've got doing them and what you're doing in order to position yourself so that you can get outside capital.
Yeah, exactly.
And that long-term thing. Britney.
I just want to add 2 points here. Piggybacking off of what Jonathan was saying, one of the things that we did with Gray Matter at the height of COVID, as we were seeing sort of all the data that was being released on Black businesses and how they were unsupported during COVID, right? And being able to get loans and PPP funding for their back house not being in order, right? So one of the things that we did is took that lens and sort of created content and curriculum for our students so that they could get in better practices and habits early on. So that includes, accounting and bookkeeping. That includes social media marketing. That includes building a website, right? So many of our community-based entrepreneurs don't have a website or centralized place where you can find out who they are, right? They don't have it listed on any sort of Google or any sort of search engine, right? And so just making sure those basic check boxes are checked for our businesses are really, really important, because when opportunities come down the pipeline and we're looking for companies to invest in, or we're looking for companies to locate, being able to be found on those search engines and being able to be found through your website is very important. I think another thing, just for the entrepreneur's perspective, one thing that we've seen in particular in our communities is, as folks are sort of in that ideation stage and thinking about what this business is going to be, they have a tendency to be scared to share that idea with other folks for fear that they're going to take the idea. And I would say, break that myth. Right now, it's not true. Your gifts are your gifts. And so your business is your business. No one can execute it the way that you do. However, it's super important to get that outsider perspective and have people workshop your business idea before you take it to a funder, before you take it to a corporation, before you take it to a partner, right? So they can poke holes in it, so they can find additional opportunities that may exist. And I think secondary to that is sort of building this personal board of directors so that you have this consistent group of people that you can constantly go to for feedback, that are invested in your success, that are invested in seeing your business succeed, to make sure that, again, you have this invested group that is able to provide feedback as you develop and build out, before you get to the stage where some outsider who can give you capital is now telling you, you should have thought about this 2 years ago, right?
Right. That's a really great point. I remember when I started at Bombheart, that was even one of the pieces of advice that I got, was just to build your own board of advisors, right? And I'm not in the space, right? But it's still important to have those folks around you that can help you with that. Desiree, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, I was going to go a little bit farther down the life cycle of a founder and recognize some of the challenges that they could use some help with. And specifically, if they receive a little bit of funding, even if it's a friends and family stage, there is this like, great, I have this money. Now I'm going to go build the business that I just described to them in the pitch deck or in the pitch. And they do not have enough capital to actually do that. So what they need to be doing is to build for the metrics that are going to get them to, or the milestones that are going to get them to the next round of funding that is on the way to this much bigger vision. And so, they start testing all these different product developments and like, oh, when we build this, this will happen. But really, it's often about customer or client acquisition. And so being really rigorous about how they look at that part of their funnel and what is the minimum viable product that they need to build to be able to sell to the early adopters is something that any advisor should push on. And what we often hear is that founders are over mentored and underfunded in this city. And so I just want to encourage anyone that is a mentor, like general strategic advice is great once you're growth stage, but when you are in the weeds building the very first versions of the plane, it needs to be able to get off the ground. And that's all that it needs to do first. So try to give that a kind of advice.
That is really great advice. And also there's just a lot going on in the chat as far as people connecting and things like that. I'm also going to drop something in the chat, which is a business model canvas that I've heard about that's supposed to be really good. So I'm just going to put that in there for folks in case they're thinking about organizing their thoughts. But also I hope that, that folks are checking out the chat and connecting with each other, as there's just a wealth of information going on there as well. We have about 2 more questions. So the next one is, for any of the speakers, do you all offer one-on-one coaching for nonprofits? I've experienced challenges identifying a sustainable business model. Recently, I've received a ton of exposure and I'm gaining interest and traction right now. As we start to look into investors, I want to make sure we are set up for success.
We do, yes. At the Urban League, we do. That's actually my area of expertise more, or it's like I love working with nonprofits. So that's more my background. And yeah, we do the same. I believe I've set my information in the chat, but we do talk to nonprofits and also try to work with them, because I think it's great that you're thinking this way, because I think sometimes some nonprofits think, oh, if I build it, people will come. And it's like, that's not a given. And we try to help you get to that point where you are a big, robust nonprofit, just like the Gray Matter experience, for example.
Yeah. And I see Desiree just put her email in the chat. Here you go. Here's your direct one-on-one access to folks here. I think, definitely reaching out to folks and things like that would be helpful. Great. And then we have one other question, which actually I'm personally very interested in. I speak multiple languages, and so this person is asking, how is the ecosystem carving out resources for ethnic minorities with language and cultural barriers? AAPIs suffer the model minority myth, and Harvard-trained founders who are Asian Americans may have better luck getting funding, but their organization serves, people from Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnamese, first-generation immigrants from African countries who are working with small businesses. So how is the ecosystem working to achieve those barriers with languages?
We, as serving the Black and Latinx community, it's something that we have thought a lot about and recognized that for the vehicle or the medium that we use, which is YouTube, and the judges that we invite to the stage. And while I am a comfortable Spanish speaker, it just didn't make sense with what we were trying to accomplish from a visibility perspective to get VCs watching and aspiring VCs watching. So we made the intentional choice not to host any pitch competitions in Spanish so far, but we might change that later. I think that just given the language of tech startups is English, it's pretty hard to move beyond the very earliest stage without that language ability. So we have not, but I will say that when it comes to differently abled people, I'm not for sure exactly the right way to say it, so excuse me, but we have done a good job, I think, of doing the voiceovers for our most recent pitches, and have become more aware of being inclusive from an auditory perspective.
Yeah.
Accessibility is really important as well. Yeah, that's a really great point.
I would say that also it depends on sometimes understanding whether or not your specific organization is the best one. So I speak Spanish as well, but if someone needs to speak to somebody who has really like, as a native Spanish speaker, I might say, you know what, it actually be better if you talk to Illinois Spanish Chamber of Commerce. We would love to work with you, but I think you're just going to get a lot more out of your time, and you're a very busy person. Talk to this person as well. They're going to be better for you. And I think that's what's nice about this ecosystem is like, okay, I don't really speak that. We don't have anybody that can do that in the language that will benefit you the most, but we do have partners all throughout the city who speak all these different languages, who understand your culture, et cetera, et cetera. And I think these are having that understanding and understanding that ecosystem and how everybody kind of plays into it and can help each other. Ultimately, we're all going towards the same goal, right? We're trying to build more entrepreneurs, especially of color, and from areas of the city that have been underinvested. So there's no reason not to share.
Yeah. I would say also that, again, going back to business affairs and consumer protections, the list of delegate agencies that they have is definitely multicultural. And so just about any ethnic group in the city of Chicago has an organization that meets those specific needs.
Yeah. Excellent. We had some folks were mentioning, yes, subtitles. I think those are really important, especially in presentations and things like that, adding in different texts and making sure that the information is accessible as well. And we have one final question, I think, to sort of wrap us out here and round us out here, which is, what is an exciting idea or for a business that you've seen or heard recently? And you don't have to name names or anything, but maybe just describe, or you can if you like, describe something that you've seen recently that's got you excited about the future.
I'm going to be incredibly biased because my little sister just started a company called Stigma. But it's really clever, and it's basically doing for Gen Z and like young kids what I think like Reddit has done for adults. And basically it's asynchronous video of support when someone's going through a mental health moment. So it's not a crisis hotline, but it's like, oh, I'm feeling really low today. Maybe it's the weather or whatever. They can post a video and then people can respond with words of encouragement. And it's just, that's kind of like personal connection, that it's not a social network. It's just this new way of communicating that I think is so in line with how the next generation is thinking about how they engage with each other and how they support each other.
I think one that was exciting for me is there's the company that's developing software that's sort of like a dating app, but it's for professional and services. So if I am an accountant, there's a video of me that talks about me, shares personal information, what my interests are outside of my profession. And then you as the customer get to go through and look at all of these folks to decide which one is, best matches you and what it is that you'd like to do. So I kind of thought it was cool because it's kind of like a dating app, right? So you kind of just swipe until you find that professional services person that sort of has the same ideals that you do in order to give you great service.
What was it called?
I can't tell you.
oh, okay. Well,
not yet at least. But
let's put it in the chat, but I can't wait to learn about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea, and sounds like we're solving for that connectivity thing that we were talking about. Brittany?
Yeah, two I would like to raise. One on the adult side is a company that is focused on getting more minorities into clinical trials for medical purposes. I just think that idea is brilliant. There are so many just diseases and issues that we have in our community that we're oftentimes not a part of the clinical trials for, that having a business that focuses around that is really important. On the youth side of things, one of our students actually won the TechRise pitch competition that we did back in November with her idea, which is an on-demand delivery service for hairstylists. So going back to that idea of folks build where they're at for the challenges that they're seeing. She's a hairstylist and runs out of product in the middle of services, and so has built this sort of idea for technology that will help to make that process more efficient for hairstylists. So really excited to support her and see that idea grow.
That reminds me, I saw one of there should be like vending machines in airports for hair products and things like that, so that folks can get those as they're on their way, or maybe you just landed and you need to fix your hair really quick. Jonathan.
Just to piggyback off that, I don't have a lot of money to invest, but if there is something, let me know. I would definitely want to put money into that because that is definitely needed. I would say, so not a business, I would actually would like to highlight 1921. It's a Black tech and co-working space that's in Roseland, right off of Michigan Avenue. And it's, I think, really a really interesting and I think has a lot of potential. It's, it's going to be a Black tech incubator in Roseland. And I don't know how many tech incubators are going to be there that far south, but the idea of that business or of the incubator is to fund Black run tech organizations where people come in at entry level $40,000, $45,000. So instead of say working at Walmart for whatever minimum wage is now, it keeps on changing, right? But this is real job creation, but real job creation with real wages, not just, okay, if I could pay you less, I would. Right. Wages that you would get at a minimum wage. Yeah. So I would say, and I believe the founder, James Parker, put his information in the chat, but just look it up online, 1921 co-working space, I think is a great place to look into and support.
Definitely going to look into that.
You just said something that triggered something that we haven't gotten a chance to talk about, but you said I would invest, and there's this interesting opportunity that's happening now, like just in general. So there's equity crowdfunding that is, for any non-accredited investor, and we're about to partner with WeFunder to make equity crowdfunding go alongside with our TechRise competitions. But I also wanted to share that there are several new angel groups that are emerging, and that we're working on trying to help people dip their toe into the water of angel investing through $1,000 or $2,000 checks to come in and kind of collectively make a $25,000 or $50,000 investment. So there's a couple of groups doing that. If you are an accredited investor, you can look that up, what the levels are. Just want to encourage you to look for Chicago Early or the Josephine Collective for those.
So many great points, and we're ending on this note of funding and finding people in their community. In the chat, there's a lot of folks. Again, make sure that you're checking that and that you're connecting with folks before we close out the call. But I just want to thank all of our speakers and our panelists today. You all have just inspired me to go out. I mean, we started early this morning, so I'm excited to keep going with my day and learn about all the organizations that are going through the city of Chicago. And I thank you all so much for the work that you're doing. It's really important, and we're really grateful to have you all as partners here in Chicago. Thank you to United Way for helping us with this, for partnering with us on this exchange. And we hope to see you all again in April when we'll be doing a pechakucha of ideas. Pechakucha is that Japanese term. It's sort of an onomatopoeia, and you may have seen those PowerPoints that are sort of like 20 seconds per slide, and we'll be doing that with our Chicago Prize finalists. So we look forward to seeing you in April. Stay tuned for more information, and thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay warm if you're in Chicago, even if you're not. Thank you all so much.